We're going to start talking about order of operations. It's going to be split. The first thing we're going to talk about is just the P and the E, the parentheses and the exponents. And when talking about that, we're going to look at the difference between having a negative number inside parentheses and squaring that versus having a negative number and squaring that. So if I look at example 1 and example 2 here, notice they're very similar. Example 1 has a negative 3 inside parentheses being squared, while example 2 has a 3 being squared with a negative outside. Well, looking at example 1, according to order of operations, I always start with my parentheses. So when I look inside the parentheses, I have a negative 3. There isn't anything I can do to simplify a negative 3. So moving outside of the parentheses, I see I have a square. Well, a square means take whatever was in the parentheses and multiply it by itself. So take the negative 3 and multiply it by itself. Well, I know a negative times a negative is a positive, so negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. In example 2, where I don't have the parentheses, the square only belongs to the 3. It doesn't belong to the negative or the minus sign. So when I square this, I'm only going to square the 3. I'm going to do the exponent before I worry about that negative or that minus subtract sign. So squaring just the 3, the negative sign drops down, and I get 3 times 3. Well, 3 times 3 is 9, still dropping the negative down. I now get an answer of negative 9. So the big difference is if I have the parentheses, I take that negative number and I multiply it by itself. If I don't have the parentheses, I take that number, multiply it by itself, and then make my final answer negative. It applies also when we are looking at expressions. In example 3, I'm looking at an expression. When I'm evaluating an expression, it just really wants me to plug what I'm given into the expression and then use order of operations. So I'm going to plug negative 2 in for A, negative 3 in for B, and negative 4 in for C. I need to plug in with parentheses, especially when negatives are involved. So I'm going to pause this video, I'm going to write that down, and then I'm going to pick back up in my recording. So I'm plugging in with parentheses, especially when negatives are involved. So let me show you what that means by working through this example. So first thing I'm going to do is this negative that's out in front of the A, I'm going to rewrite that negative. Instead of writing this A, I'm going to plug in a negative 2. And notice I'm not just writing negative 2, but I'm putting it inside those parentheses. Minus, same thing with the B. I'm going to put in a negative 3 squared minus, and then same thing with the C, a negative 4 squared. So I plugged them all in with parentheses. Now I can go ahead and evaluate this expression. Well, what I see a lot of students want to do, because we drill in so much that negative and a negative becomes positive, they right away want to make this positive, and this positive. But I can't, because that would be breaking the rules of order of operations. Order of operations say I need to start with parentheses and exponents. Well, I cannot, inside each of my parentheses, I cannot simplify a negative 2, a negative 3, or a negative 4. However, I can square a negative 2, I can square a negative 3, and I can square a negative 4. So I'm going to do some side work over here just to show where I'm getting my numbers from. Negative 2 squared, I know, because it's in parentheses, I take the whole negative 2 and multiply it by itself and get positive 4. Negative 3 squared, same thing, is negative 3 times negative 3, which is 9. And negative 4 squared is negative 4 times negative 4, which is positive 16. Put each of those in place. This negative sign drops down, giving me negative. Again, negative 2 squared we just saw was 4. And doing the parentheses allows me to, doing the exponent allows me to drop my parentheses. This minus sign drops down, and as we just seen, negative 3 squared is 9. This minus sign drops down, and as we just seen, negative 4 squared is 16. And now I can go ahead and just subtract. Negative 4 minus 9 is negative 13, and negative 13 minus 16 is negative 29 for my final answer. So big thing on this video is really just to remember what is the difference when I have a -3 in parentheses versus a -3 outside of parentheses. And again, it's all about order of operations. What is being squared? Is a negative being squared, or is the number being squared and then the negative just coming along with it? Other big thing to remember is that when you are substituting or plugging a value in for a variable, when it is negative, make sure you are putting it in with parentheses. Any questions, please bring them with you to class.